It was a huge film, as these three prequels all were. There was a massive amount, and also a massive amount of creativity went on also. The costumes for this film, as well as the episode 1 and episode 3, as well as the original Star Wars, were just incredible. And the shows were done over in England. A lot of the crew was English, a lot of the crew was American. Here's a small part of the costumes. They're always a big part of the Star Wars series. Creatures are always a big part of the Star Wars series too. And here's just a very few of them. You'll see these guys in various forms throughout the film. Some are, or most of them are just throwaways. I mean, it's amazing how George just loves doing that, because they're just like sort of part of the experience of living in that universe. You know, you don't have to make characters out of them. So he decided to start, and he decided to do it all in digital. He had experimented with it. George had on episode 1 and had a few shots in that, or a sequence in that. Episode 2, all digital. Shot with Sony cameras, I think, and it was just lovely. You could just keep the cameras rolling and rolling, and you could, you didn't even have to see dailies. They were right there for you on the monitor, and he really embraced it. And it took Hollywood 10 years or so to really sort of agree to it, and a lot of the folks, and to change. Some of them are still saying, I'm shooting on film, and they love it, which is fine, but digital gives you a whole other possibility of things. You can shoot like an available light. You know, he could have made American Graffiti here on 4th Street without any lights, which would have meant it would have been faster, cheaper to make, probably would have been just as good, maybe even a little more interesting to look at, because you would have seen practically just the light from the ambient city, glowing up in the sky, and it would be sort of bright and everything. So there's a lot of wins with the digital world. George liked it because it kept everything digital all the way through the system, all the way through the effects. So they shot all over the world, mainly in Italy, though, in Spain and England. This is one of the locations they had in Lake Como. This is not George Clooney's house, but it may be. I shouldn't say that. It might be. And they shot in Italy. They also shot in Spain. It's quite a spectacular place there. Some of you sound like you might have been there talking about it. And they did a lot of wonderful embellishment to it with the digital technology, and also just with ILM being the way it was. We did all the work here in San Rafael, or pretty close to all of it. There were just huge amounts of effects. Every one of these 3 prequels had at least 2,000 effect shots in it. So he'd do something like shoot this on the location, and we would just change the view, beyond the columns there to make it look much more futuristic and spectacular. So he'd be mixing the locations with, where we could put in different views outside to make it, look a little more alien and wondrous than it actually was. Just shots like this, where all we have is the grassy hill that he shot in, and then we put in all the other stuff. We've got things like this. Again, pretty much just some blue screen and green screen, and making the sets a lot bigger than they actually work. So even though we have these fantastic sets, like the one in Spain you saw, and even the one in Italy, they weren't big enough for George. He still wanted stuff to be bigger and faster. And we have a lot of the regular effects that action sequences Star Wars films have. There's this big chase of flying vehicles through a city at nighttime. And Ewan was in this, a terrific actor, a lot of terrific actors in this film that did a great, great job. And of course, Yoda appears in there too. And one of the things that George did to even get a vaster scale and to save, I don't know what, $500,000 or $500 million, something like that on the cost of the film, was to do an awful lot of blue screen shooting. So there's this massive battle in it, or like a Coliseum scene, with all these people up, or characters up in the rafters, and are watching in the seats, and this big battle going on down below, and they're going to sacrifice people. It's all done in blue screen, and a lot of work in this film is in blue screen, and a lot of the prequels are full of this idea of shooting to save money and to open up the vastness of the film. Shoot against blue screen instead of trying to build things and having to compromise for budget. And he was really the only one doing this at the start. And then Peter Jackson picked up on it for the 2nd and 3rd Lord of the Rings. Everybody's doing it now. You can't see one of these movies, these action films or these superhero movies without seeing, you don't know it, but hundreds of shots that are like shot in Vancouver, but it looks like New York. you know, shot on a stage in Louisiana, but you're convinced it's happening in London, something like that. It just goes on all the time. And he was just way, way ahead of his time. And this is the sort of result you get. You actually look at it and you think, hey, you know, these guys are there, and it's as big as Spartacus or bigger than that, you know, but it isn't. And the backgrounds on these were mostly were all ILM, mostly CG, matte painting, sometimes miniatures in the background, you know, so whatever it took. At that time, we had a great model shop, and we were mixing models and CG all the time. And sometimes you mix even like this. You're supposed to be sort of in one of those, you know, wonderful palaces there you saw at the beginning of the slideshow. But in fact, here, the interior is done in front of the blue screen, but you still think you're in that palace. So all sorts of things mixed together, you know. And George directed these, so we knew exactly what he wanted. And to even increase the scale, you know, 10,000 people, how are creatures, how many here are soldiers, how many he wanted, you know, we were just doing more and bigger than we ever could have before. But we never actually worried because we had this character behind us, which was actually George leading our way and saying, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. So let's look at this now. So what you're seeing is the 3D version, and it's in a deeper 3D than you've seen before. It's something that I really like more. Instead of things ending at the film plane, things will be coming out in the theater a lot more than most films you've seen. They won't just be popping out. They will be living out in the theater as well as behind the screen, front of the screen, behind the screen. So I'm interested afterwards in seeing what people thought about it. If you can even see the difference from the 3D films, if you care about it. Not many people have seen this. It was shown like twice in Europe last year. So any sort of feedback is interesting. But I think I like it because you have more opportunity to play with the depth, and you can focus your attention in 3D that you can't do in a regular 2D movie. 2D movie, you do it with the lens and the lighting. In this, you can actually do it by throwing something that's farther away, something that's closer, so you look at this one object. So it seems like it's easier to tell a story quickly in 3D than you can in 2D. But anyway, I'll be interested in seeing what people think. So enjoy the show.
Dennis will be back for a Q&A after the film, so please stay if you want to. Thank you.